Have you ever felt like your life is just a movie on repeat? The same problems, the same struggles, only with different characters? What if that so-called new beginning is nothing more than the old state in disguise? What if I told you that most people who believe they're starting fresh are actually pressing replay on the same old story? They switch jobs, change partners, move cities, yet somehow the same frustrations keep showing up. It feels unfair, almost like fate. But Neville Goddard's law of assumption reveals the hidden truth. You don't change life by changing things. You change life by shifting states. And here's the paradox. Desire alone can keep you trapped. The more you want, the more you affirm you don't yet have. That's why feeling is the secret. Until you install a subconscious blueprint change, you'll keep recreating from the same state, no matter how hard you try. So the real question is this: are you truly stepping into a new state manifestation, or are you unknowingly rehearsing the same identity with a different mask? Because once you grasp this, you'll see why imagination creates reality, and why living in the end is the only doorway to real transformation. Many people believe they're starting fresh just because they switched jobs, ended a relationship, or moved cities. But if the inner state hasn't shifted, what seems like a new chapter is just the old book with a new cover. It's like repainting a cracked wall, pretty on the outside, but the cracks always return. Life keeps mirroring the same blueprint inside. How many times have you heard someone say, "This time will be different," and yet a few weeks later, they face the same disappointments? That's the trap of recreating from the same state without realizing it. The subconscious carries yesterday's assumptions straight into today, packaging the old as if it were new. Neville Goddard's state teaching always warned about this cycle. Imagine a person who leaves a toxic job only to find the same kind of boss in the next one. Coincidence? Hardly. They didn't undergo a subconscious blueprint change, so their reality had no choice but to echo the same tone. The scenery may look different, but the play is the same. Feeling is the secret, and until it shifts, the outcome can't. That's why some chase new beginnings as if they were lottery tickets, hoping one will finally cash in. But no matter how far they run, they carry the same state with them, like invisible luggage. Neville Goddard taught that imagination creates reality, but it's not imagination alone. It's the state of being behind it. Without a new state manifestation, new is an illusion. Think of it like planting seeds. If you keep planting the same kind, you'll keep harvesting the same fruit, even if you change the garden. A shift state's Neville moment is when you realize the soil isn't the problem, it's the seed itself. The law of assumption says, what you assume about yourself dictates the harvest, not where you plant it. Ever notice that family patterns repeat across generations? Poverty, failed marriages, struggles with money. People swear they'll do better, but unless they live in the end of a new state, the script runs automatically. It's not destiny, it's programming. Until you step out of the old state, you're bound to replay the same scenes with different actors. It's almost comical how the mind convinces us, this time it's different. A new house, a new partner, a new circle of friends. But sooner or later, the old feelings creep back and reality bends around them. Without anchoring a new state manifestation, you're only redecorating the prison, not leaving it. Neville Goddard's law of assumption makes this painfully clear. Picture someone who keeps dating the same type. Different faces, same story. That's recreating from the same state. The subconscious doesn't care about names or addresses. It only projects what you feel to be true. Feeling is the secret. It stamps reality with your assumption. Until that feeling changes, no amount of external effort rewrites the script. Here's the twist. Sometimes the new beginning feels exciting at first. Fresh energy, a burst of hope. But soon, familiar frustrations show up, almost like déjà vu. That's the signal you're still carrying the old state. Neville Goddard's shift state's teaching shows us excitement fades if the underlying state hasn't transformed. The thrill wears off and the cycle resumes. So what looks like a restart is often just pressing replay. Different stage, same lines. The real transformation happens not in external changes, but in internal states. And that's where Neville Goddard points us, to stop chasing the new outside and instead install it within, which leads us to the real root. The state itself is the source of all outcomes. Neville Goddard was relentless about one thing: everything flows from the state you occupy. Not sometimes, always. You can't outsmart your state. You might try harder, work longer, or pray louder, but if you remain in the same inner atmosphere, the results will reflect it perfectly. That's why imagination creates reality. It's filtered through the state you live in. Think of a radio tuned to a specific frequency. No matter how much you wish for another station, until you shift the dial, the music won't change. Your state works the same way. The law of assumption is not about forcing outcomes. It's about embodying the assumption that naturally tunes you into a different reality. A person may desire wealth, but stay in a state of scarcity. The result? Even if money arrives, it slips away because the inner state rejects abundance. That's why Neville Goddard state teaching insists, shift states Neville style or watch old patterns repeat. The subconscious blueprint change doesn't happen through wishing, it happens through assumption. States are not abstract ideas, they're lived experiences. You know when you're in one by how the world feels to you. Have you noticed how, in a state of confidence, opportunities almost find you, and in a state of fear, even small problems feel overwhelming? That's proof. Feeling is the secret. It's your inner climate dictating the weather of your life. Neville often used the example of living in the end. If you can assume the state of the wish fulfilled, really feel it, you begin to draw circumstances that match. It's not about pretending, it's not positive thinking, it's identity. You become the person who already has it, and the world rearranges accordingly. Imagine two actors reading the same script, one with passion, one with boredom. The words are identical, but the performance changes everything. That's what states do. Two people take the same action, but the outcomes differ because the root state is different. Neville Goddard called this the unseen cause behind all visible effects. Someone once asked, "How do I know what state I'm in?" Simple. Look at your life, your relationships, your finances, your daily experiences. They're all mirrors of the state you most consistently occupy. That's why recreating from the same state guarantees repetition. Your outer world cannot break the law of assumption. States aren't permanent prisons. They're like rooms in a house. You can move from one to another, but most people don't realize they're free to walk out. They keep decorating the old room, not knowing the door is unlocked. Neville Goddard showed us the key. Imagination plus feeling, lived consistently, is the way out. When you grasp this, it's liberating. You stop blaming circumstances, people, or even God for repeating cycles. You realize, I've been living from the wrong room. And with that awareness, the power returns to you. It's not about effort, it's about alignment. Feeling is the secret, and living in the end is the doorway to a new state manifestation. So the question isn't, what do you want? But, from what state are you wanting it? That shift in perspective reveals everything. Desire from lack keeps you locked. Desire from fulfillment sets you free. And this naturally leads us to ask, why then do external changes seem to collapse so often, even when we work so hard for them? At first glance, changing the outside feels like progress. A new job, a fresh relationship, maybe even a move to another city. It feels alive, different, promising, but soon the same challenges resurface. Why? Because the state hasn't shifted. You're still recreating from the same state, so the story replays itself under a new disguise. Neville Goddard's state teaching makes this plain. Life is not moved by appearances but by states. You may escape one environment, but unless the subconscious blueprint changes, the energy follows you like a shadow. It's the inner script that writes the outer play. And if the script isn't rewritten, the actors will keep saying the same lines. Think about it. Someone leaves a draining relationship, swearing they'll never repeat the same mistake. Yet within months they're with a new partner who carries the same patterns. External change can't outpace the inner state. Feeling is the secret, and until the feeling shifts, the outcome stays glued to the old frequency. This is why promotions at work often collapse into the same dissatisfaction. The new salary comes, the new title arrives, but the inner state of lack or unworthiness quickly swallows it. Without a new state manifestation, even success turns bitter. It's not the job, it's the state you carry into it. Imagine trying to fix a movie by repainting the screen. The images might look different for a moment, but soon the projector forces the same film again. Your subconscious is that projector. Until a shift state's Neville moment takes place inside, the projection won't change. External tweaks are just temporary paint jobs. This explains why diets, new routines, or even new friendships often lose steam. They're built on the surface while the foundation, the state, remains untouched. Neville Goddard's law of assumption insists that the root cause is not action, but assumption. Actions without assumption are like planting seeds in dry soil. Nothing holds. Many people confuse effort with transformation. They think working harder guarantees different results. But when effort comes from the old state, it only reinforces it. It's like trying to row a boat upstream. The harder you row, the more you feel stuck. Subconscious blueprint change is the only way to truly redirect the river. That's why some lives feel like a loop of déjà vu. Every January feels like the last. Every new relationship echoes the old. Every attempt at reinvention crumbles back to familiar frustrations. Without living in the end, without choosing the state of already having, external change is nothing more than recycling the old into the new. Notice how even sudden windfalls, lottery wins, inheritances, lucky breaks, often vanish. Because the person didn't shift into the state of wealth, their old identity of lack reclaims the story. Neville Goddard warned, "The state is everything. And when the state doesn't match the blessing can't stay." So the reason external changes don't last isn't bad luck or lack of willpower. It's because reality has no choice but to return to the state you embody most deeply. The outside bends to the inside always, which brings us to the real architect of experience, the subconscious blueprint that silently writes the world you walk into. Beneath every action, decision, or reaction lies an invisible script, the subconscious blueprint. It's not written in words, but in feelings, assumptions, and emotional tones carried for years. Neville Goddard's state teaching explains that this hidden design determines how life unfolds. Until a subconscious blueprint change happens, life keeps repeating the same chapters. Imagine a house built on crooked foundations. No matter how many times you repaint the walls, the cracks keep showing. That's what happens when someone tries to start fresh without touching the subconscious. The law of assumption makes it clear. Outer changes collapse back to inner assumptions. Feeling is the secret, because feeling is the foundation. This blueprint often comes from childhood, phrases overheard, repeated family patterns, cultural beliefs. Money doesn't grow on trees. Life is a struggle. These embed themselves, and unless challenged, they become the silent architects of reality. Neville Goddard's Shift States teaching reveals, your imagination must build a new state manifestation to overwrite these codes. Think of the subconscious as soil. It doesn't care what seeds are planted. It simply grows what's sown. If you carry assumptions of lack, the soil produces lack. If you plant abundance through imagination, it yields abundance. The subconscious doesn't argue, it accepts. That's why Neville said, live in the end and let the soil work for you. The tricky part? Most people aren't even aware of their blueprint. They think life is random, when in truth it's precise, mathematically precise. The subconscious keeps score of the state you most dwell in and reproduces it faithfully. This is why recreating from the same state feels like fate. It's not fate, it's programming. Ever notice how some people just have bad luck? Nothing works out, opportunities slip away, relationships fail. It's not that life has cursed them, it's that their blueprint is coded with assumptions of loss. Until they install a subconscious blueprint change, life keeps reflecting the same movie reel again and again. Neville Goddard used to remind students that imagination creates reality, not as a metaphor, but as literal law. The subconscious blueprint is simply imagination hardened into fact. The things you've rehearsed in your inner world, whether fear or faith, become the scaffolding of your outer world. Shift the inner rehearsal, and the play changes. You can think of it as an operating system. If the OS is outdated, no matter how new the apps are, they crash. That's why relationships, jobs, and even spiritual practices collapse without a new state manifestation. Feeling is the secret software update. Without it, the old OS keeps running the same glitches. The beautiful part is this: the subconscious blueprint isn't fixed. It can be rewritten. A single assumption deeply felt can rewrite years of programming. That's the heart of Neville Goddard's teaching. You don't need to fight the past. You only need to assume the end and let the subconscious accept it as fact. When you grasp this, you stop wrestling with circumstances and start tending to the blueprint itself. You ask, what assumptions am I planting? What feelings am I rehearsing? This is where transformation begins. Because the blueprint is the true architect, and knowing this prepares us to face one of the biggest traps, desiring change while still rooted in the old state. Here's the hidden trap. People believe desire alone will change their lives. They pray harder, visualize longer, and write endless affirmations. But if the state they occupy is still lack, the desire only emphasizes what they don't have. Neville Goddard's state teaching warns, wanting from lack keeps you locked in lack. It's like standing at a shop window, pressing your hands against the glass, whispering, "I want that." The more you want it, the more you affirm the distance. Recreating from the same state means your subconscious blueprint still shouts, "Not mine yet." Feeling is the secret, because only feeling as if it's already yours pulls it in. Many confuse wanting with having. Desire feels exciting, but it can also be the strongest reminder of absence. Neville Goddard explained that imagination creates reality only when you assume the end. If you keep identifying as the one who wants, you never become the one who has. The state decides, not the wish. Think about relationships. Someone wants love desperately, but they remain in the state of being unloved. Every action, every word, even their body language radiates that assumption. The law of assumption ensures others respond accordingly. Until there's a shift, states Neville style, living as already chosen, the desire stays unfulfilled. This is why goals often fail. Desire sets the target, but the state carries the arrow. Without a new state manifestation, the arrow keeps circling back to the same ground. Feeling is the secret, because it's the only way the subconscious accepts a new blueprint. Thought alone can't carry the weight. A simple example, a person saving money while constantly fearing bills. They want wealth, but their state is anxiety. No matter how much they earn, the fear keeps them broke. The subconscious blueprint doesn't record the numbers, it records the tone. That tone becomes the reality they walk in daily. Neville Goddard said, "You must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled." Notice, he didn't say assume the wish itself, he said the feeling. Because desire without state is like a balloon without air, colorful but lifeless. The true power comes when desire transforms into identity, when you are the one who already has. This explains why people can achieve small wins through desire and effort, but they don't last. A new partner, a bonus at work, a streak of good luck. But soon, the old patterns reclaim them. Without a subconscious blueprint change, desire just becomes a revolving door back into the same life. To break free, you must see desire as an invitation, not the end. It's a signal pointing you to a state you haven't yet embodied. Desire whispers, "There's more for you." But the only way to claim it is to live in the end, to feel now what the old self insists belongs to tomorrow. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop desiring from lack and start living from fulfillment, desire dissolves. You no longer want, you already are. That's when reality bends effortlessly, which naturally leads to Neville's most famous teaching, the one that anchors all of this. Feeling is the secret, and without it, no state can truly shift. Neville Goddard's most repeated truth was simple. Feeling is the secret. Not thinking, not wishing, not hoping, feeling. Because thought without emotion is just noise in the mind. Only when thought is clothed in feeling does it enter the subconscious as law. That's how a new state manifestation takes root. Imagine trying to plant a seed on stone. That's thought without feeling. It just bounces off, leaving nothing behind. But when you add emotion, whether joy, gratitude, or relief, the soil opens. That's how subconscious blueprint change happens. Feeling is the water, the soil, and the sunlight for the seed of assumption. This is why affirmations often fail. People repeat them mechanically, but deep down, they feel the opposite. "I am wealthy," they say, while vibrating anxiety about bills. The subconscious hears the feeling, not the words. Recreating from the same state keeps happening because the old feeling keeps looping back. Neville taught that imagination creates reality, but he never meant daydreaming alone. He meant feeling the scene until it's real inside. When you imagine yourself free, loved, abundant, and actually feel the relief or joy, it impresses the subconscious. That's the moment a shift state's Neville style becomes permanent. Think of it like acting. The greatest actors don't just say lines, they become the character. You forget they're acting because their body, voice, and energy carry the truth of that role. That's exactly how states work. Feeling is stepping into character, and the law of assumption ensures life gives you the matching script. Feeling is also the test. How do you know if you're in a new state manifestation? Check the feeling. If you still feel desperate, needy, or doubtful, you're in the old state. If you feel calm certainty, relief, or gratitude, you've crossed over. Feeling doesn't lie. It reveals the state you actually occupy. And here's the beauty. You don't need hours of effort. A single moment of deep, genuine feeling can impress the subconscious more than weeks of mechanical repetition. Neville used to say it takes just a naturalness of feeling for the new blueprint to take hold. The power is in sincerity, not strain. Everyday life gives examples of this. Think about someone who walks into a room with confidence. They don't say a word, but everyone feels it. Why? Because their state is carried in their feeling. The same is true in manifestation. Others, opportunities, even circumstances respond to the vibration of your inner tone. That's why Neville insisted on living in the end. When you dwell in the feeling of already having, you create inevitability. It's not pretending, it's rehearsing until the subconscious accepts it as normal. That's when reality bends, not by accident, but by law. The law of assumption always follows the emotional blueprint, so the mind may ask, how do I make myself feel? The answer is, you don't force it, you invite it. You create a short scene, imagine it vividly and let yourself sink into the relief it would bring. That feeling is the passport to a new state. And now the natural question is, how do we actually practice this shift? Neville Goddard taught that the fastest way to change life is to assume a new identity. Not someday, not maybe, now. Because the subconscious blueprint only responds to who you believe yourself to be in this moment. If you're still recreating from the same state, you'll keep replaying the same life. The practice is simple, but profound. Define the version of you who already has what you seek. Don't describe the money, the house, or the relationship. Describe you. How do you wake up? How do you walk? What do you feel when you check your phone, greet people, or look in the mirror? Feeling is the secret, and this feeling defines the new state manifestation. Imagine an actor stepping into a role. To play a millionaire, they don't just wear a suit. They study how a millionaire thinks, eats, moves. You must do the same. Shift states Neville style by rehearsing the role of your fulfilled self. The more natural it feels, the faster the subconscious blueprint change locks in. A practical method Neville suggested is creating a short inner scene, just a few seconds long, but rich in detail. For example, a friend congratulating you, or you slipping into bed in your dream home. Don't analyze, feel. When you feel it as real, the subconscious accepts it as fact. Imagination creates reality through that doorway. Start small. If imagining wealth feels overwhelming, imagine something simple, paying a bill with ease, or walking out of a store with your arms full of groceries, carefree. These scenes anchor you in the state of abundance. Feeling them consistently builds the new subconscious tone. Soon, larger desires slip naturally into place. Daily repetition matters, but not as hard work, as natural living. Before sleep is the golden moment. The subconscious is most receptive then. Drift off while feeling the scene of the new identity. Neville Goddard called this the bridge of sleep, where imagination and feeling merge into the law of assumption. Think of it like muscle memory. At first, it feels like pretending, but soon it becomes natural. Just as a pianist no longer thinks of every key, your new identity starts playing itself. That's when the shift states Neville talked about takes root. Identity transforms from effort into embodiment. Notice how subtle changes confirm the practice. You start reacting differently to situations. People treat you with more respect. Opportunities appear that never came before. These are signs the subconscious blueprint change is working. Life bends because you assumed a new self, not because you chased external fixes. The biggest mistake is waiting until results appear to feel different. That's backwards. The state comes first, then the result. Living in the end means being now what you once thought was later. It's not fake. It's the only way reality can mirror back the new state manifestation. When you practice this consistently, desire loses its edge. You stop chasing and start being, and from that place the world rearranges itself effortlessly. Which brings us to a natural question. How do we know when we're still trapped in the old state, repeating patterns instead of fully wearing the new identity? One of Neville Goddard's most piercing lessons was this. Life always tells you what state you're in. If you're recreating from the same state, the evidence will appear right in front of you. Patterns repeat, frustrations echo, and no matter how much effort you pour in, nothing really shifts. The mirror doesn't lie. A key sign is déjà vu struggles. You leave one job for another, only to face the same difficult boss or co-worker, or you start a new relationship, and the same conflicts resurface. That's not bad luck. It's the subconscious blueprint still running. Feeling is the secret, But if the feeling hasn't changed, neither will the story. Another sign: constant frustration. You try hard, you pray, you visualize, but results feel stuck. That wall is just the old state holding firm. Neville Goddard state teaching shows that thought without state is powerless. If you're still rooted in lack or fear, no action can override the emotional blueprint. Notice your self-talk. If you often hear yourself say things like, "Why does this always happen to me?" or "Nothing ever changes," that's proof of the old state still running the show. The subconscious is echoing assumptions you haven't replaced. Shift states, Neville said. Otherwise, the same assumptions harden into facts. Pay attention to money patterns. Maybe you earn more, but the bills expand to match it. Or every time you start saving, an emergency wipes it out. That's recreating from the same state of scarcity. Until you live in the end of abundance, the subconscious blueprint will continue producing the same outcomes. Relationships offer another mirror. Do people consistently misunderstand you, dismiss you, or mistreat you? That's not coincidence. It's the old state radiating out. Neville Goddard's law of assumption makes it clear. Others only reflect the role you unconsciously assign them through your state. Emotional tone is also a giveaway. If worry, doubt, or fear are your daily background music, you're still in the old state. A new state manifestation feels lighter, calmer, inevitable, but the old state feels heavy and repetitive. Your feelings are the most honest indicator of where you're dwelling. Look at opportunities. If doors keep slamming shut, or every effort requires exhausting struggle, that's another clue. Neville explained that when you truly shift states, the bridge of incidents flows naturally. Struggle signals resistance, flow signals alignment. Feeling is the secret that opens doors without force. The strongest sign is this: if different situations keep producing the same outcome, you haven't moved. New city, same loneliness. New business, same stress. New circle of friends, same betrayals. That's recreating from the same state in action. Until the subconscious blueprint change happens, the scenery may shift, but the plot doesn't. Recognizing these signs isn't to condemn yourself, it's to wake you up. Because once you see the old state clearly, you're free to choose again. And when you do, life shows you something radically different, the unmistakable signs that you've finally stepped into a new state of being. When the subconscious blueprint truly changes, life begins to echo back differently, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. One of the first signs is a shift in ease. Things that used to feel heavy start flowing. Neville Goddard's state teaching calls this the naturalness of assumption. You're no longer forcing, you're allowing. People notice the change in you often before you do. They comment, "You seem different," or "Something about you has changed." That's because feeling is the secret, and your inner tone is radiating outward. Without trying, you start drawing new reactions from others, reflecting the new state manifestation. Opportunities appear where before there were blocks. It could be a phone call, a new connection, or an unexpected idea that solves a problem. Neville Goddard often called this the bridge of incidents. Once you shift states Neville style, life orchestrates coincidences that gently move you into your assumed end. Another sign is that worry begins to lose its grip. In the old state, doubt and fear ran the show. In the new state, you feel a sense of inevitability, as if what you desire is already on its way, no matter how it comes. That calm confidence is the subconscious blueprint change at work. Relationships shift too. People who once ignored you now show respect. Others who drained your energy quietly drift away. New connections arise that mirror your new identity. This isn't magic. It's the law of assumption unfolding. You live in the end and others align with the role you've assigned them. A deep gratitude begins to surface. Not because everything is perfect yet, but because you feel it is. That inner thankfulness is a hallmark of a new state. You stop waiting for results to feel good. Instead, the good feeling itself becomes the seed that grows the results. Your self-talk changes without effort. Instead of "I hope it works out," you catch yourself saying "It's already done." Instead of "What if it fails?" you hear "Of course it succeeds." That's not forced, it's natural. The subconscious blueprint has been rewritten, and your inner dialogue testifies to it. Even your body responds. Stress begins to dissolve, sleep feels deeper, your posture straightens, your energy feels lighter. Neville Goddard used to say, "You are moved by the state you occupy." When the state shifts, the body reflects it, often more faithfully than the mind. Another powerful sign: you start enjoying the journey itself. In the old state, you were restless, chasing results. In the new state, there's peace in the process. You live in the end already, so the middle becomes enjoyable. Desire transforms into fulfillment, and fulfillment breeds more fulfillment. And perhaps the most unmistakable sign, repetition breaks. Old patterns no longer return. The same mistakes, the same struggles, the same cycles, they lose their grip. You realize you're no longer recreating from the same state, but walking in a new one. And that's when Neville's final reminder rings true. You always have a choice: repeat or recreate. Life at its core is choice. Not the surface choices of what to eat or where to live, but the deeper one: which state will you occupy? Neville Goddard's state teaching insists that every outcome is born from this invisible decision. Recreating from the same state means choosing repetition. Choosing a new state manifestation means true creation. It's easy to blame circumstances, people, or even timing, but the law of assumption leaves no room for accident. Whatever you consistently feel and assume, you live. Feeling is the secret. It doesn't care if it's joy or fear, abundance or lack. The state doesn't discriminate, it simply produces. Every day you're standing at a crossroads. On one side is the old blueprint, familiar, predictable, repetitive. On the other is the unknown, the new identity, the life waiting to unfold. Shift states Neville style, and the path bends toward creation. Stay in the old, and the loop continues. Most don't realize they're making this choice every moment. They think the future depends on luck, hard work, or divine intervention. But the deeper truth is this: the future is simply the extension of the state you occupy now. Subconscious blueprint change is the lever. Pull it and the world moves. Think of life like a movie reel. You can replay the same film again and again, calling it My Life. Or you can splice in a new reel and watch an entirely different story unfold. The projector doesn't argue, it only reflects. Imagination creates reality by deciding which film you hand it. The choice is rarely about effort, it's about courage. Courage to stop identifying with the old self. Courage to embody a feeling before evidence appears. Neville's reminder to live in the end isn't about pretending, it's about daring to accept a new reality before anyone else sees it. And yes, the old state will tempt you back. It feels comfortable, even in its pain. That's why people stay stuck. Not because they can't change, but because they keep rehearsing the old emotions. Feeling is the secret weapon. Once you anchor in the feeling of the new, the old loses its pull. Every breakthrough story shares this moment. Someone got tired of repeating. They stopped wishing and started assuming. They chose to install a new state manifestation, no matter what the senses said. And slowly, or sometimes suddenly, life began bending in their favor. The law of assumption never fails. The beauty is that you're never trapped. Even if you've lived decades in the same pattern, one new assumption can rewrite the script. That's the grace Neville Goddard always pointed to. You can always begin again, not by starting over outside, but by recreating from a new state within. So the final question isn't whether change is possible, it's whether you will choose. Will you repeat the old blueprint, decorating the same prison walls, or will you recreate, stepping boldly into the state of your fulfilled self? The choice is yours, and with that choice, your entire world shifts. So now the question is no longer whether life can change, it's whether you will choose to step into a new state or keep replaying the old one. Every moment is an invitation. Repeat or recreate. And the truth is, only you can decide which story gets written from here. Ask yourself, what state have I really been living from? Do my daily feelings mirror lack or fulfillment? Am I still waiting for life to change before I do? Or am I willing to live in the end now? These are the questions that unlock transformation. Because Neville Goddard's reminder is timeless. Imagination creates reality, and feeling is the secret. The moment you dare to embody the state of your fulfilled self, everything begins to rearrange in your favor. If this resonated with you, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep walking this journey with us. Each teaching is another step in mastering the law of assumption and living the life you've always imagined.